of Directors to order. A couple of housekeeping things we need to get out of the way. One is we have a pretty full crowd tonight. We have citizens communication cards on the ledge. If you would please complete one of those, get it to our city clerk so they can get it to me so we can recognize you speaking tonight. If you have a cell phone with you, we ask you to please silence those cell phones now while this meeting is being conducted. We have quite a few that have already issued a card to speak tonight. I wanted to just remind you that be mindful of 5 minutes. We have 5 minutes per person. Right now we have a limit of 50 minutes of citizens communication time to be respectful for everybody's time, and we have at least 3 or 4 different issues to address tonight with the cards that I've just went through. So be respectful of the time, and we have 50 minutes, up to 50 minutes allotted tonight for citizens communication time when we get into that portion of it. All right, at this time we'll have a roll call.
Assistant Mayor Harris.
Here.
Director Hollibush.
Here.
Director Brewer.
Here.
Director Jewell.
Here.
Director Smith.
Here.
Director Roberts.
Here.
Mayor Brown.
Here. At this time, we'll stand for an invocation to be given by Director Steve Smith. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our Deputy City Clerk, Jenny Norris.
God, we just come to you tonight. We pray that you would be present in the room with us as we discuss the items listed. Just pray that you give guidance. Pray that you speak over the situations at hand. We also pray for calmness and patience and a willingness to listen. I thank you for the hearts in this room on both sides of the board, the residents, and all of the concerned citizens. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We'll move right on into citizens communication time. At this time, Ms. Bursey. See here.
Good evening, Mayor Brown and council members. My name is Brenda Bursey, and I'm here to address item 5 on the rezoning and voice my opposition. This zoning has become a fiasco. The planning department came from pulling a PUD out of a hat to throwing zones against the wall to see which one sticks. If due diligence was done by the planning department, we would not have gone through the PUD. Or was it filed under false pretenses, thinking no one would catch it? Something to think about. Is the planning department working for Mr. Duffer, or is it working for the city, is my question. Mr. Duffer has begun pre-site work on the assumption that he would not have any problem coming into this residential neighborhood and changing this zoning. Or someone in the planning department told him that it would be no problem and for him to proceed. I have learned from this process that citizens can get a bulldozer and do dirt work around a site irregardless of gas lines and water lines without a permit. This is my 5th meeting from C3 open display to PUD back to C3. Mayor Brown, did the council send this issue back to the Planning Commission?
No, ma'am, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. When it failed on the first rezoning of C3 open display, it went back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission sent it back to the City Council as a PUD, which failed on a technicality. The City Council resubmitted it to the Planning Commission, and as far as I know, it has been not be redressed by the Planning Commission. The Planning Department is bringing it directly back to the Council without going through the Planning Commission. In the previous meeting, it was stated by the chairman of the planning commission that a C3 open display can be between a bank and a salvage yard. Ms. James stated that a C3 is the most liberal and worrisome and unrestricted and hard to hold accountable. This is what they want to put in our marginalized neighborhood that would have no say in what goes in it. They just want one, this is just one failed element of the C3 zoning. Mr. Travis and Ms. Jamie stated that this is not a new business but a companion business for Tri-State Auto, which would be a garage to work on their cars only, no public access. C3 open display, section 2822. Established. This district is established in order to provide adequate locations for retail uses, which serves the needs of the motoring public and are characterized by a high level of vehicle ingress and egress. Retail is the sale of goods and services to consumers. Does this garage meet this qualification for C3? Failure number 2. Mr. Travis looked me up on Act Data Scout. Well, I looked Mr. Duffer up. He owns around 14 car lots. And in several locations, there is ample room to put his 2-lot garage and not put it in our neighborhood. Now, to my amazement, I did not find Tri-State Auto under Mr. Duffer's name. Tri-State Auto address is Miller County Records, and Miller County Records is located at 722 State Line. Mr. Duffer lots on Laurel that he's trying to change reference back to Tri-State Pawn Shop. Out of all the meetings I've been to, Tri-State Pawn has never been mentioned. The owner of Tri-State Auto Sales shows to be a company by the name of Camarata out of Beaumont, Texas, who owns Church's Chicken. Now, Mr. Travis said I didn't live on Laurel Street. Well, the owner of Tri-State Auto don't live on Laurel Street. He don't stay in the city, and he don't stay in the state. We are changing this zoning for who? Who are we actually dealing with? Gentrification is what this change request in zoning is implementing. The neighborhood demographics shift and the cultural characteristics of the neighborhood changes. There is a need to protect the legacy of the residential neighborhood, to protect the people who are forced to accept changes to benefit individuals and not the neighborhood. This is still a spot zoning when zoning is usually at odds with the city master plan and current zoning restrictions. The owner of the lot next to this is adamant about this rezoning not being approved, and several other owners on this street is opposed. We have a historical site which has plans to restore of Orr School.
Ms. Barcy, are you getting close
Yes,
to being
well, too much. We want to revitalize this downtown neighborhood, and we want to make it a gateway neighborhood. And we will deconstruct where necessary, renovate housing to livable residences, and restore our historical site. We hope to make this a downtown gateway, and we are asking the city council to help us make this vision happen by denying this rezoning. Thank you.
Just for clarification, Jamie, to make sure that I'm correct, but originally, when this was first brought to the board, the Planning Commission had approved the C3 zone, and it was denied, by the way, it was voted down that particular night. And then the second was the PUD. But the previous C3 zoning request was approved by the Planning Commission.
Yes, for those 4 lots.
That's what I thought. That was the previous one. And just so we're clear as to the procedure tonight, the procedure tonight is reconsideration for that against the 180-day requirement with a failed zone. So it would take 2/3 of the vote tonight for the board to place that back on the agenda.
Yes.
If that vote is not affirmative, then that ordinance will not be considered tonight.
Yes,
Okay?
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ray Bursey.
Mr. Brown and Board, good evening. My name is Ray Bursey, and I'm here to address item 4 on demolition of my property at 823 Laurel Street. I want to begin, it was at a planning commission meeting on January 14, 2023. This is when Mr. Douglas informed me I would be receiving a letter the next week, receiving a letter informing me that my home would be on the demolition list. I did receive that letter, and me and my wife looked over that letter, and we agreed with it. But the following day, I sent a contractor out, and he called me. He said, Mr. Bursey, there's a personal letter stapled to your house. I said, a personal letter? He said, yes. I said, it's not a red tag or anything, is it? He said, no. I said, so I went to the home, and this is the letter that was stapled to my house. This is the letter that I received in the mail for this meeting tonight. And Mr. Mayor, I would like to know what employee stapled my personal mail on a house for this meeting. It was stapled up there. And so we agreed to this letter. And this action that was taken by your employees, I'm going to call it retaliation or intimidation. And at the last board meeting on January 21st, 2025, Mr. Travis seemed like a city employee. He passed out my personal information to the board. And go back and review that meeting, and you'll see him walking around with my personal information. Now, with that said, he passed out some certified personal information that you all had sent to me that I signed for. Now, on that matter, according to Arkansas state law, states that a registered letter sent to a specific person by a city department cannot be given to someone else outside of the city personnel unless the recipient explicitly authorizes another person to receive it in writing. I did not sign any paperwork with the city to pass out my personal information that you have on me. And Mr. Mayor, Mr. Brown, I would like to know what employee did that. I was not aware that my house was tagged. Over 5 years, I've never seen a red tag at 823 Laurel Street. Never have seen a red tag. The main problem I see with that property is the front porch. And I am willing to redo that property instead of spending $10,000 on demolition of that property. With that being said, I did not like again when Mr. Travis passed out my information and called out my name in this meeting and rooting for me to be placed on this demolition list that I'm on tonight. This demolition list, according to the statutes of limitations, section 4-88-115 for civil rights, Arkansas Code 16-56-10 states a 3-year limitation. It says actions to enforce are within 3 to 5 years. Mr. Douglas, a city employee, presented my code violations from the years of 2008 and 2012. These are beyond the statute of limitations of the state of Arkansas, and I feel I should not be on the demolition list. And in closing, once again, I'm going to say, of these matters brought to you are forms of retaliation and intimidation on my part. These retaliations and intimidations, they are because Mr. Duffer is trying to get city employees to make zoning ordinances for him. Thank you.
Tyler, if he pulls a work permit, can we pull him off this list and give him a chance to fix the property?
Yes, they have, if you were to condemn the structure, they'll receive a notice that it's been condemned, and they get 30 days to pull a permit. They can pull a permit at that time, and the permit's good for 6 months.
Now, Tyler, in that 6-month period, is that to start work or to complete work?
That's to complete work.
Tyler, he brought up some other issues that you'll have the city attorney address some. He's citing some, did we follow the proper procedures? Is that?
Yes, absolutely. And even if not, we're going before condemnation again. Roger, was this condemned years ago, or was it just tagged years ago? So it's already been condemned back in 2012, and it could have been tore down then. It's been so long since that time that we're taking it for condemnation again, just because it's been so long.
We waited
We come across those sometimes, and we try not to get in the habit of condemning anything that we're not going to tear down, which is why this one's coming back before you. We tried to get it last year, but we didn't do it last year because we didn't have enough funds to get it, which is why it got bumped to this year.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Percy.
Can I just make this statement, please?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
You'll have an opportunity to speak again if the ordinance makes the
Just
table.
at that time, I think it's a meeting they had in 12, we had the city, I don't know if it was the city marshal, fire marshal, or somebody from the city, came and did a walkthrough in the house and said it was restorable. And that's why they didn't tear it down, because he said it could be restored.
Okay. Mr. May, I believe it is, James May? Yes, sir. Yes.
Y'all bear with me, I don't read or write real good, but I'm in between two rocks and a hard place. I've been battling this 1720 Pearl Street for 3 years. There's been no sewer, no water, and I'm still having this smell. I live in between these two structures that need to be torn down. I'm willing to buy the diesel or whatever it takes, but you don't know what I had to smell living in between these two houses. There was 2 cats carrying 1 rat. It was so big out. I can't stand it. I need to get some help. Please, I'm begging y'all in front of everybody in here. This ain't been going on no 2 months. This has been 3 years. Mr. Tyler knows well what I'm talking about. No water, no running septic or nothing, and I have to smell this.
You're stating that you've been here before, that there's people living in those houses with no electricity or water.
Well, now, they was until they got them for cruelty to animals. They found dead dogs in there that wasn't taken care of. That lady done got sent to the penitentiary over there.
So there's
And
nobody
all-
living in there now, this is just the residue that's left when they were
Yeah,
there.
yes, and
So-
man, you can smell it. I live in between these two houses.
What-
And
720 is
there ain't
on our
none-
list to be condemned tonight.
So,
720 is on our list to be condemned
okay,
tonight.
well, you got 1716, that's me. You got the other one on the other side that ain't had water, electric in over 5 years.
What's
What's
that
the
at?
address of the one on the other side?
714 probably?
Well, he's 1720 and the other one's
I
7.
believe it's 1712. I believe it is.
I'm the brick house. They're on either side of me. So I swear to God, if y'all had this living beside y'all and had the smell and look at what I smell, something would have been done years ago. And I'm begging the city to do something about it.
We understand. Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes,
Miss,
sir. Mr. May?
Mr. May,
Yes, sir.
would you also talk about how somebody goes in the back of the yellow house at night and stuff?
Oh, they done pulled the OSB boards off. They still going in there and doing whatever they do. And I'm talking about dead animals laying in there in the floor and stuff. It's terrible. And the lady that owns them won't do nothing about none of this. And I had to smell this every day. Man, this has been over 3 years, Mr. Hurt.
Okay, yes, I know, yeah.
You know how long I've been on this.
And the reason why I had him to come back and say that, because the police should know. He was talking about to me one time, could he get the police just randomly check that yellow house, because sometime at night, whatever they doing in the house, they doing some stuff, probably what they ain't got no business doing, so. And that's why I was
double truth right there.
Well, is the yellow house the one that's not up for, to be,
Ain't no yellow house, so the brick house is mine.
right.
okay?
All right, 1720 is here.
When
The-
t- yeah.
The one to the right of my house,
Okay.
on both sides of the street.
Yeah.
Man, you ought to just please look at the yard, look at the conditions in the house. That lady that owns them, she won't do nothing about it or even try. That's Joe Pesky's slumlord if I ever seen it. I just can't take it no more. Please help me, I'm begging the city.
But she's here tonight, so
Well,
I see it.
let's
I
see
see
what-
it in orders.
Mr. Harris, just do what y'all can do. I've been trying to be quiet and keep my mouth shut. But man, look here, 3 years? This is unacceptable. Here. And I thank y'all for listening to me. I don't read or write or nothing like that. Mr. Tyler knows well what's been going on over there.
Did a good job.
Thank y'all. God bless you.
Travis? I'd just like to say before Travis comes up here, I meant to mention this before, that our city attorney was in an accident prior to the meeting on State Line, and we're trying to get him here. He wasn't injured, but somebody evidently run into him and left the scene, and so we're trying to get him here, but he's not here right now. That's the reason why. Travis?
I'm Travis Phoenix. I'm here on issue number 5, where we need to see if we can reconsider that zoning request tonight. I know the first time we tried to get the C3 zoning, I don't think the board necessarily had all the information before we voted that night. And of course, we tried as a PUD and found out we weren't in compliance with what the city ordinance was. So we've had to circle back again. And anyways, the standard on changing zoning, is the best and highest use of the property. And I think anybody that's driven down that street would agree that this is absolutely the best and highest use of the property. There's been no new construction, residential, commercial, anything on that street probably in the last 5 or 6 decades. The homeowners on that street haven't done any substantial improvements to their own houses in probably 2 or 3 decades. Most of the houses are in bad disrepair, have fire damage, such as Miss Bercy's house that is on the list to be tore down because it hasn't been resolved. They had issues going back to 2008 where the city had mailed them letters telling them, put your house up, bring it up to compliance or tear it down. And for some reason, she's our loudest opponent on this deal. But anyways, I just want to say thanks for reconsidering issue number 5, and if we have more questions, we'll address them at that time.
All right, thank you. Jimmy?
I appreciate the time to come before y'all today. Can I pass these out?
Sure.
I'm basically here
Thank you.
on all the residents in Oak Ridge First Edition about our road. And I've lived there for 35 years, and there's nothing major ever been done to that road. Where I live, from my ditch to cross the road to the other ditch is completely caved in. On one side, there's a hole. It's got to be this long and this deep, sticking in the road, and all the way across the road it's swagging, where it's sinking. We've got umpteen potholes in our neighborhood. They have come out in the past and put that hot stuff, whatever they call it, and it'll last a month or so, and then it's out, and the hole's bigger. When you first turn in at Oak Ridge, there's a hole there about this big around, about this deep, and if two cars, one's going in and one's coming out, you can't do it. Because this car's got to get so far over to either straddle that hole, and if you go to the other side, on the edge of the road, it's humped up about this tall. So if you've got a car, it's fixing to drag, because I've been in a car that drug. So that's a problem. It's just mainly, I took it upon myself about 2.5 years ago to try to stay on top of this. And I have talked to Mr. Roberts about it. I've been told 2 years ago they were going to see about putting us on the list. Last year they was talking about putting us on the list. So far this year, I was told just last week, well, the list hadn't been made out, but they didn't think I was going to make it. In 35 years, nothing major's been done out there. And the road is terrible. And I'm not here to hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that, but everybody that's on that petition had nothing good to say about the city's road department, nothing. And they've all told me that they've also complained about our road over a period of time. I just think after 35 years, it's time that we get on the list and get a new road.
The drainage is extremely bad too in certain areas.
Well, one neighbor brought that to mind where his house is. The ditches hadn't been done by the city in 10 years or so.
By Mr. McCormick's house coming around the corner, it's really bad right there.
Well, when you come in, that big 2-story house right there, he said now it's just flooding across his yard now because the ditches hadn't never been cleaned out. So I just think we were annexed in. It's the city's responsibility to take care of this stuff. And like I said, I went to over 90% of the neighbors are on that list, and they're not happy. So I just appreciate y'all's time.
Absolutely.
Nicole Keel.
Good evening,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor and Directors. Tonight, I just wanted to address a particular issue that's come to our attention. My name is Nicole Keel, and I'm with Christ Evangelistic Outreach Ministries here in Texarkana, Arkansas. We've been operating since 2009 in the city. Typically, we do a lot of open-air evangelism, so a lot of open-air preaching, passing out tracts, etc. In 2009 and 2010, there were some issues. But in 2011, we obtained the services of the American Center for Law and Justice, and they helped us. And from that time forward, for the last 14 years, we've had zero problems with the city of Texarkana, Arkansas, being able to engage in constitutionally protected speech activities until January the 7th. January the 7th, a gentleman was ticketed downtown for street preaching. He was given a ticket. He's had to appear in court once, and he will have to appear in court again this week. Another gentleman was forbidden to preach in front of Walmart on the Arkansas side. February the 9th is when that happened. There's video for the first encounter. There's not video for the second. I'm coming today because in 2011, one of the things that the American Center for Law and Justice we discussed was that our ordinances really are unconstitutional. They actually forbid, our noise ordinance does, forbids constitutionally protected activities. For example, in section under A, section 3, it says that singing on the public square is unconstitutional. The very fact that I can stand before you today is a result of people who walk the public streets, use the traditional public forum to sing, to chant, to demonstrate. And I can be here today because of that. Our ordinance actually forbids that. I'm coming before you today stating that we need to change that ordinance so that people or citizens who are engaging in constitutionally protected speech are not under a threat of getting a ticket or going to jail. Greger versus the City of Chicago says that peaceful marching, chanting, singing is protected by the First Amendment. The other things that are protected, the use of amplification is also protected. Music is a form of expression, whether a person is singing, whether people are chanting, whether you're preaching. All of those things are protected speech. There is law, there is precedent handed down by the Supreme Court that these ordinances need to fit within, and as written, they don't. But for the past 14 years, in 2011, it was understood they would not be enforced, and they haven't been. We've not had any issues. No one has stopped us. The exact same activity these two gentlemen, one was given a ticket for, the other one stopped, are activities that we constantly and consistently engage in. And I'm just coming before this board today to ask you to please take this before First Amendment or some constitutional attorneys, some organizations that will help bring this in line with the First Amendment as the Supreme Court has handed down that precedent so that these ordinances will reflect something that our city really does stand for. I'm really thankful for my city. I love my city. I do not want to see my city embroiled in any kind of unnecessary litigation. And I think this is going to open us up for that if we continue to stop people engaging in constitutionally protected speech activities. My time is up, and I thank you for yours.
Yes.
What ordinance are you referring to? Noah's ordinance?
The North Ordinance,
Okay.
yes. It does basically state, as you read the creation, it's ambiguous and pretty vague. And I'll read the first part of it if you want me to. But it basically says any sound that disturbs somebody. Well, you and I you might have a cause that you want to advocate for. I might not like it. But you know what? You have every right to speak and to express yourself about that cause or whatever it is. So whether or not a person likes the speech is not a reason to restrict that speech. A heckler's veto has been stated by the Supreme Court that it is unconstitutional. Just because a person doesn't like that speech, as long as it's in a traditional public forum, which is public right-of-way, that's what it is, you can't restrict that person's speech. And that includes amplified speech. You are allowed, Cy versus New York says that we can be heard. So that person has to be able to reach their intended audience. Now, I'm not talking about unconstitutional speech, like, inciting a riot or anything like that. I'm specifically speaking about constitutionally protected speech.
But there has to be some kind of limitation to the amplification. Wouldn't that
There
be an issue?
can be, but the way this reads, you can't use anything. It says no yelling, no shouting, no hooting, whistling, or singing. So if a person is trying to get their message out, they're going to have to raise their voice, and somebody is not going to like it. Again, if you restrict that person from being able to raise their voice or use amplification, you are now restricting their constitutionally protected activity.
Well, I think that any
You
city
can-
would have the right to restrict the noise,
How many decibels, but there needs to be typically
Sure.
in other municipalities that
I
have.
could agree with you, but just to say that you could turn it up to any level just because it's protected speech. I
No,
would agree with
no, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, that's the issue.
Okay, well, this right here restricts it all. There's not even a level that it says you can be at. There's no noise control officer, there's no set level of decibels, there's none of that there at all for anyone.
For the gentleman that went to court,
Yes,
what was the,
he has another court date this Thursday.
what was he cited for specifically? How was it listed on the ticket?
I have my phone. I believe it is disturbing the peace. I think is what it said, it's disturbing the peace.
That's what
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Any other questions? I will email each one of you the information that I got from the ACLJ back in 2011, the letter that we received, and the case law that I have as well for you to look at. But I don't want to see my city embroiled in any kind of unnecessary litigation.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Gill.
thank you.
Casey Weir.
How are y'all doing today? Mr. Brown, thank you for having me. I don't want to be here today. I'm strongly here to oppose Opposition 7. I'm kind of speaking on behalf of my parents because my dad's been having some medical problems, and I just have a couple things to read about this. I spoke to Tyler, I spoke to a couple people. Can a guarantee in writing be made regarding the following? There will be no increase in emergency calls due to violence, drug use, or disturbances. There will be no decrease in property value. No decrease in property value. There will be no increase in crime. There will be authoritative supervision. There will be zero tolerance policy for any crime. Evidence-based practices will be implemented. If the person proposing this plan is so confident in the success of this halfway house and that there will be a positive impact socially, physically, then I would think they would feel comfortable putting something in writing to guarantee these things. Standard 21A indicates that each resident has a right to recovery plan and exit plan strategy. So I'm assuming this is only a transitional living situation and one in which the residents will change continuously. Since the exit strategy is required is a piece of the standard. Standard 10A discusses relapse policies with standard F16 indicating an alcohol and drug-free environment, but no consequences are listed nor is removal from the residency permanently listed. This poses a huge concern for the community. If consequences are not listed in the standards, how can we ensure that a zero tolerance policy for drug use will be implemented? Since the National Alliance of Recovery Residents does not have a consequence of policy listed for breaking the rules, who will enforce the rules? And what is your policy regarding substance abuse relapse? Will you implement a zero tolerance policy with any substance use reported? The public deserves to know the policies, regulations, because if the rules and regulations are not upheld to the fullest, then we can only assume that safety and crime are higher risk than what we are even imagining. I grew up in this neighborhood. Potter, you grew up in this neighborhood. Stover, you grew up in this neighborhood. Many residents that may be here today that grew up in this neighborhood. Steve Smith, we spent our whole lives in this neighborhood.
Casey, just let me remind you, two of the rules, we don't refer to the board members or the city manager by name.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Well, half the room grew up in this neighborhood. Half the city grew up in this neighborhood. The Douglases, the Trishmans, the Weirs, the Cranks. This used to be where we all resided and felt safe and roamed the streets as, we grew up here. The sole fact that I even talked to somebody here that said that only people within 300 feet of this house had to be notified by city policy. We need to change that. We need to go a mile from a halfway house in a residential neighborhood. 300 feet? I just found this out last week. My parents don't even live a half a mile away, not even a quarter mile away from this. Many people in this city, we don't read the newspaper. We don't get our information like that. It just happened to see, I found it on Facebook. I think that is horrible. We're kind of in the dark about this situation. And some of us are not. And we have a lot of questions and a lot of answers that need to be answered. And these are some of the things that we need that, we'd like in writing that it's not going to happen, especially the decrease in home value. And I'd just like to know, can we change the policy to notify when something like this happens? And I guess I'm done here.
Allison?
Okay. I have concerns regarding the location of this residence. I'm not sure what they're naming this type of facility, but I believe it may fall under boarding house with the intention to house women in recovery. I'm going to talk very fast because I have a lot to say and not a lot of time. My first concern is the crime risk. Even with supervision, people can relapse into substance use, which can lead to criminal behavior in an unsafe environment and neighborhood. Even if there are criteria used to select certain candidates to live in the residence, and these candidates are chosen with the best intentions, that doesn't guarantee a successful residence. That is not my opinion, but evidence-based research. There's a 40 to 60% chance of relapse for those with substance abuse and a 44% chance of relapse into criminal behavior within the first year for those with a criminal background. 2 articles from 2023 and 2020 article from prisonpolicy.org state the conditions that often involve violence, abuse, and neglect in facilities like this. It cites that substance abuse, mental health disorders, and the challenges they face can potentially lead to criminal activity. The following are common issues noted by those that have either lived at or worked in this type of residence: overcrowded drug use, a lack of supervision and accountability and consequences, public disturbances, an increase in traffic even outside of proper hours, and an increase in police and emergent calls. My second concern is regarding security and safety. Senior citizens and children are more vulnerable to crime. Having this type of residence in a neighborhood that isn't able to best foster this type of housing can lead to a senior isolation, safety concerns for kids, a decrease in quality of life, and an overall toll on mental and physical health of individuals in the neighborhood. My third concern is regarding the decrease in property values. Being very transparent, location matters. We heard a few people already speak on location, and so I think we can all agree on that. We live in a border city, and people that live in Texarkana are very vocal about the differences in the quality of the city depending on where you live. We've seen what can happen to an area when a neighborhood starts to decline. Some of the most beautiful homes in Texarkana are selling for well below their value due to the neighborhood bringing down their property value. I don't need to name these areas. We're all very aware of them. People sell and the neighborhood continues to decline. This isn't stereotyping or discrimination. People have lived experiences from certain neighborhoods, and the majorities of families that try their hardest are going to find neighborhoods that are safer. The reduction in appeal leads to stagnation and decline in property values. The homeowners have a financial investment in their home, and to have that investment reduced or impacted is no different than theft. Nobody is arguing that this type of residence is unwanted, but rather that the location is crucial to its success. Another research study completed by Shilton and Lindsay notes the following: to be successfully integrated into a community, this type of facility needs a public that understands its purpose and neighbors who are comfortable with its procedures. The public is more likely to accept placement if programs are away from residential neighborhoods, and that it will be more likely to succeed when there has been careful assessment of the community prior to entering it. Neither of these criteria have been met. Thus, I can only assume that the person organizing this is not concerned about its efficacy. To use a group of vulnerable people as a financial investment to make money while feigning ignorance regarding a community's concerns about the social, financial, and economic impact is negligible and a form of discrimination in and of itself. Other alternatives are available, and yet this individual is not receptive to the fact that there are better options zoned for this specific type of residence. If the person proposing this is not a member of the community, then they don't feel the impact of a decision in the same manner. The possibility of providing a positive environment for one population of people should not come at the cost of affecting the environment for the community. I have little faith in someone operating a high-quality, efficient, safe environment when they seem to have little care for the neighboring community, which also includes children and senior citizens. There are other alternatives, and I don't understand why we wouldn't pursue other options, given the evidence-based research and current feedback you've received from the community. Other options include industrial or commercial zones. These areas offer better infrastructure and reduced impact on residential life. Larger, more remote locations away from schools, parks, and family-focused areas ensure a better environment for residents to recover and integrate. I do know that a comparison was made to a foster care facility. I would like to remind everyone we have a great example of a foster care facility on the end of Sanderson. It is operated to the highest quality, and it is not in a traditional residential neighborhood, and it is working at the top tier of fidelity. I just don't understand why we would continue to ignore the voices of the community. And I would be willing to work with someone to find a location that best fits the needs of the future residents of this and the community.
Gary Huff. Gary Huff.
Can I ask her a question?
Yes.
You said 2 criteria have not been met, and I missed it. What would you say?
The 2 criteria, you want me to say it again? To be successfully integrated into a community, this type of facility needs a public that understands its purpose and neighbors who are comfortable with its procedures. The public is more likely to accept placement if programs are away from residential neighborhoods, and that it will be more likely to succeed when there has been careful assessment of the community prior to entering it.
Thank you.
Mr. Huff.
Mr. Mayor and Directors, my name is Gary Huff, and I live at 17 Cambridge Drive, and I want to speak about item number 7, the conciliation agreement. But before I start what I came to say, the number one item on this, or to me, is a lack of respect for the city and its ordinances. When you bludgeon your way into a city in defiance of established ordinances, it speaks to the character of the operation. And that's all I'll say on that. Also, on page 3 of the conciliation agreement is a statement that says no party has been coerced, intimidated, threatened, or in any way forced to become a party to this agreement. That could be removed, and I personally don't think it would affect the nature of the agreement. But I also think that 80% of the people in the room right now understand that the reason for considering the agreement is the threat of a lawsuit. I would like to read a few things from the joint statement of the Department of Justice and HUD dated March 5th, 2008. The term group home does not have a specific legal meaning. In this statement, the term group home refers to housing occupied by groups of unrelated individuals with disabilities. The term group home is not discriminatory, nor is it pejorative. It's just a group home, or a word that will encompass many different names. And the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of handicap. Handicap has the same meaning as the term disability, which is used in other civil rights laws. Sometimes we confuse the two, but they have the same meaning legally. Federal Regulation 24 CFR 982.614 states about a group home. The unit may contain private or common sanitary facilities, commonly we call them bathrooms. However, the facilities must be sufficient in number that they need not be shared by more than 4 residents of the group home. The unit must contain at least 1 bedroom of appropriate size for each 2 persons. So when you're considering a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home, in 4th grade I learned how to multiply. And I keep coming up with the number 8. Yet, on page 5 of the conciliation agreement, it states, respondents agree to immediately allow complainant to operate a recovery residence at 14 Downing Drive, Texarkana, Arkansas, to accommodate up to 12 individuals. That is not in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is where you will find the regulation that I quoted. Now, I have been told by a couple of people that that only applies to HUD-funded properties. So I did a little research. And I'm quoting from usaccessboard.gov, and they list 12 categories of private sector, non-HUD funded facilities that must meet ADA standards. Among these are housing and places of lodging. I don't think Walmart, Albertsons are HUD-funded facilities, but they do try to comply with Americans with Disabilities Act. Finally, the ADA has very exacting standards concerning accessibility. Among them are ramps for wheelchairs, wheelchair accessibility, the width of hallways, the width of doorways, even type of door handles, and bathroom modifications which are too numerous to mention. This house currently has, at 14 Downing, has a wheelchair-bound person. She's admirable in how she copes. I think she's probably a fine person. But the house has the bathrooms in houses. I live in the neighborhood, and they are not ADA compliant for handicapped access. And remember, handicap and disability have the same legal meaning. And finally, the possibility of a liability issue for the city if a non-compliant ADA facility is authorized by the board is reason enough not to enter into the conciliation agreement. And thank you for extending my time.
Mr. Arnold, Mr. Arnold.
First, my name is Henry Arnold. Stand beside my lovely wife, Charlotte Arnold. I live on 2816 East 18th Street. And next to my house, which is 2810, which is next door. And anyway, back here this summer, I think it was in the month of June, May or June of 24, the house caught a fire, okay? And it's just a big, excuse me, it's just a big eyesore. And anyway,
Henry, was anybody living in it when it caught fires, or is it abandoned?
yes,
There was.
yes, and anyway, the guy that was living there, now, this is in summertime, you know, it's June, July, somewhere along there, and he built the fire. He was cold, that's what he said.
And we just trying to find out if it's on the condemned list to be condemned, because it's been almost over.
No, it's not.
Just
Has that been tagged?
Yeah,
Do we know?
yeah, I doubt it, because the process, Henry, for one, is a very lengthy process to condemn. We were just discussing that this afternoon. It's over 300 some odd days, almost a year, to go through the legal process with the ordinance to condemn a piece of property, so.
Well, now, it has been tagged,
Okay.
right?
We tried to reach out to find the owners. We've been unsuccessful several times.
We can get somebody in Public Works to call you and let you know where it is on our list and what status we're in right now, but.
Can I give you this as well? I'm your director for Ward 3 over there, so you can reach out to me if you don't get the answers you're looking for.
Oh, yeah, you came about my house for me to vote for you.
I hope I earned that vote.
Did you? Give that card back if you did.
Well,
If you want something done, you better say you voted
Hey,
for it.
Alan, He got my vote.
I appreciate that.
Do we-
All right.
Thank you.
Well, I got 2 minutes and.
We don't need any jokes tonight, but,
No.
If you want to sing and amplify your voice, you're legally allowed to.
Thank you.
I don't have any more citizens' communication card. We're actually 5 minutes over our 50 minutes. Is there anyone else? We'd give maybe one more opportunity. Anybody that didn't fill out a card? Give you another opportunity. All right. If not, we're going to move on with our agenda. Tonight, we have a consent agenda. Director Harris has asked that we remove item number 2. So our consent agenda now will consist of item number 1 and item number 3. Item number 1 is approval of the minutes of a regular meeting on February the 3rd. Item number 3 is to adopt a resolution approving the addition of the airport assets to the city's insurance policies. What would be the consent of the decision of the board?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to adopt item 1 and 3 on the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And the consent agenda passes with 1 and 3. Director Harris.
Yes, what I was trying to do on this is, I know it's supposed to be a street study, from my understanding. And my concern about the street study, I think we done had maybe 2 street studies in the last maybe 10 or 15 years. So, and I'm just give the information on one street study that back when the public did a bond issue back in 2013, that they had request for a $20 million bond issue for the new streets. Now, and then the boards went around to different organizations and stuff, or different parts of the community, and talked about how we was gonna do the streets and this and that. But what ended up happening is that the city ended up using $10 million of that bond issue to go out and cross road to do a 4-lane concrete street. And hoping that a business or something will come out there. And to this time, I don't think no business or nothing ever came out there. And to me, you kind of, I feel you misled the public when you was telling them that you was doing you were going to come and do roads within the neighborhoods and all that. But you ended up, like I said, you did a 4-lane.
Are you saying we did the street study and then didn't follow the street
No,
study?
I
This
don't
had
think
nothing
you
to do
did.
with the street
No,
study.
you
This was a
did.
bond issue.
Well, kind of both.
We
because
issued a bond issue.
You did a bond, you did a
I
street
did.
study. Well, none of y'all wasn't here at the time, so I'll make that clear.
Thank you.
None of the board, I was the only one that was here, when that happened, so. And I didn't vote for that $10 million street that was done out in Crossroad because I didn't feel that was something what the citizens voted for. But what I'm getting along to, that if another streets study, which you planning on doing one, which I'm saying that I think it's a waste of $35,000 because I basically can tell you for its Ward 2, based on the pothole list I give about every, I ain't gonna say maybe 3 or 4 times a year at least, and then you just got somebody spoke during civil communication time and brought up about a street that need to be done, you got signatures. So and then, like I said, when I drive around the neighborhood, I can see like you got Hayes, Lyndon, Pinehurst, Siebel, Cow Street, them just a couple streets I can name. But then also the other issue is that, we mostly compared ourselves to Texas side. And Texas normally have about 1.1 million to maybe 1.1 to $1 million a year that they using and spending in streets. We don't have a fund directly for that, for doing street. Now, we finna go in the future and may do a bond issue, but I just think that if we just put aside, just spend $1 million a year on streets, to me, that kind of would really help solve our issue and then when we talk about a bond issue, I don't think we paid the one off. It's still back in from 2013 or 2014. I don't know how much of that is being paid off that, how much is that, but to me, the county put the citizen in debt. And I think you should just take care of that problem as that problem goes along by allocating so much money for that, for doing streets and road and in the neighborhoods and stuff. So, and then what street is gonna be done? That I think us board members can get together and figure out what streets you're going to do prior, if you do go that route, eating a bond issue. Because if it was me and the citizen, I really want to know what streets you're going to do prior you asking the public for money again. Because I don't want to happen what happened back then in 2014. I think that's when it happened, when they went out there and built that $10 million road back in Crossroad. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but yet you told the citizen that you were going to do streets in the neighborhoods, and that's how it was projected to the citizen, but you turn around and did just the opposite. Like I said, and I'm going to say this again, I was the only one up here when that happened. None of the mayor wasn't here in the board, and I think sometime if you forget the past, you continue, you may do it again, so that's the reason why I'm bringing this up. So.
Director Harris, that's the goal here. We would like to do the street study so that we have an accurate representation of our current position with our streets in anticipation of a street bond. And that is exactly what we would like to do. We would like the backing of the street study to propose to you and then put that out and hopefully gain support for a bond.
Any other?
Now, to my understanding, prior to the last street study we had, the actual street study we had was not done, it was 1988. Is that correct?
No, I think you're thinking of the comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive plan?
Yeah, the last comprehensive plan we had done prior to the one we just did in
Was 88.
23 was 1988. We did a street study in 2012, which we followed that with the GO bond in that same year, that $20 million bond, and we did another street study in 2020. You really need to do one about once every 5 years. We've had so much damage just within the last few years, and in anticipation of a bond, we wanted to go ahead and get this done this year. We've just had too many changes, too much damage since our last street study. It's what we have now is not an accurate representation.
Well, having a non-updated street study, does that affect us as far as matching funds, state grants, federal grants?
Yeah, it certainly can, yes. Whenever we go out for grants, for instance, hazard mitigation grants, FEMA grants, they want to see a hazard mitigation plan in place. If you don't have these plans in place, if you don't have this proven data in place, a lot of times you won't get those grants. So yes, the street studies certainly help.
So do I understand it that the study, the grants require the study?
Not necessarily, no, but in some cases it helps. Some cases it's required. It's not, for this particular case, we're doing this in anticipation for a bond, not a grant. But, I mean, we're not to that point yet, but we don't even know if we're going to get there. The bond would be a vote of the citizens, but we would need the street study in order to do that. And most street studies you're talking about for a city of our size, I know Texas side is in the process of one now. They're paying close to $100,000 for it. You can get extremely detailed with these studies. This one is nowhere near that amount, but we're getting a very good study for the amount of money that we're putting into it. We're getting extreme value for that.
Was the cost of the study built into the budget?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this was paid for.
Any other discussion?
Hey, Tyler, I remember in 2020 when we did the street study, it really served as a good blueprint for the foresight.
Mhm.
So it's going to help with, the having the foresight of the financial applications or what have you. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Jimmy?
So, what I'm hearing, there are grants out there that doesn't have to be paid back that we can apply for?
They're extremely few and far between. They're extremely difficult to get. We get a state aid grant once every 3 to 4 years for a road. We chase them constantly. There's not much money available for roads out there. There's more money available for trails and sidewalks for grants than there are roads, unfortunately.
Any other discussion?
And my last statement is that the last street study, which I think I said 2 or 3 times at the board meeting, to me, it was biased against the poor neighborhood, and I'm gonna say that again, and I hope that this one does not be biased against the poor neighborhood, and then I got a question on here as to, I'm seeing, how is it gonna be done, who, I know it says it's gonna start February the 7th, when kickoff meeting in alignment, saying February the 17th, so,
You mean what methods are they gonna use
Yeah.
to evaluate the streets
Mhm.
and that type of stuff? It's in that agreement. They drive the roads, they drone the roads, they picture the roads, that's the company that does this for a living, so.
yeah.
Yeah, this is nobody around this community. It's completely outside of our organization. There's no bias there whatsoever.
I'm just going to ask one
And I'm
question.
still gonna say, to me, it's a waste of money, so.
Once if this is passed and completed, the board will get a copy where we can
Yeah,
go to
absolutely.
the citizens, have community meetings, explain to them what's
Just-
going on.
Just like I did with y'all, the last study we have, I will give y'all deliverables. I'll organize it whatever way you want, prioritize it. Here's your priority roads, that sort of thing. Yeah, we'll have the ability to organize it, however you wish to view it.
It'll also be web accessible through their hub.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Is this the same company we use?
No.
No? I didn't think
We-
it was.
I wasn't completely happy with the last one. I felt it could be a little bit better, and we are paying a little bit more for this one. And they do offer a better service here.
Any other discussion? If not, I would instruct the city attorney to read the resolution.
Whereas the city of Texarkana, Arkansas submitted a request for qualifications in January 2025 for engineers, architects, and surveyors to conduct a street study. And whereas after proper advertisement, InfraHub LLC submitted the low base bid in the amount of $33,750 for the 2025 street study. Whereas $35,000 is budgeted for this project with no additional appropriation required. And whereas the city manager and staff recommend approval. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the City of Texarkana, Arkansas, that the city manager is authorized to enter a contract with InfraHub LLC for the purposes set forth above with funding from the sources and amounts so indicated. Pass and approve this 18th day of January 2025.
City attorney's read the resolution. What would be the desire of the board?
Motion to
Motion
adopt.
to adopt.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Could you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
No.
Director Holbush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
Yes.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, and the resolution passes. Moving along to our regular agenda, item number 4 is to consider the following action concerning 13 substandard structures. We'll open a public hearing regarding the condemnation of those substandard structures, and then we'll adopt a resolution condemning those 13. Roger.
Okay, this is just like last year, bringing the houses to you. You've got them all listed. Do y'all want to look at them house by house?
We've got it in.
Y'all
our
got it
packet.
on y'all's?
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
We got it.
Majority of them are we're still in getting the burnt ones and the ones that are pretty much falling down. They're all in very poor condition. And do y'all have any questions about
So
those?
technically, we are in a public hearing to discuss any opposition or any information anybody would like to conduct during a public hearing of these that pertains to these 13 structures. Any discussion?
I'm trying to see which one are they. I haven't got to that point yet. Okay, I see it.
Well, you don't take verses off there.
19th Street, Walters. Earl Street, Green, Mary Ferguson.
Mr. Bercy, while he's looking for that, did you want to have this removed from the list, or did you guys want more time to try to repair that property?
What's the procedure, Roger, to do that? If the board votes to remove that particular, what's the Bercy status after this?
The status of the house, it's already been condemned, so I mean, once a house has been condemned, you can't give a permit for it.
That's a statute of
Outside that.
limitation that's passed.
I'm sorry?
Statute of limitations.
Is there, Josh, is there a statute on it?
We'll be happy
Condemnation.
to, if the board so desires, we'll be happy to meet with Mr. Bercy and do a walkthrough of the property, let him know what needs to be done to bring it up to code, and issue a permit.
Should we remove it or not?
Because after tonight, if it stays on the list, they have 30 days to get a permit and then 6 months to repair, correct? I mean, that's, would that give you enough time?
No.
Or no?
Can I speak?
Yes. Ms. Bercy, your contention is that it's exceeded the statute of limitations, so it shouldn't be on the list.
Right. It shouldn't be on there, so they have to reissue a red tag and condemn it. But my issue is, we did as back in 12 what the city directed us to do, to board it up and make it unaccessible and not a safety risk for the city. So it's behind chain link fences, locked, it's boarded up. And the only thing that's really wrong with the property is the porch roof. That's all. The housing part of the house is structurally sound. So all we need, and 6 months is not, and I need that, show me that in the rules and regulation where you have to have it completed in 6 months. I think you have to show ongoing progress on fixing it up, is what it is. And we will do that, but we just want to take it off the list, and we will bring the house up to standard.
So did we retag this from 2012, or did we just go with the original condemnation?
No, it's been retagged. It was already tagged. We're putting it through because I have to run everything through the state and everything else on every house, so we're virtually running it through again.
Were they notified that it was basically being retagged?
Yeah, that's what he's talking about, that I had stapled to the door.
We want it to be torn down, not that it's retagged.
He gave me a personal letter. He put my personal letter.
Well, that's part of our ordinance is, a lot of times we can't find
Reissue that it was condemned.
that it's coming to the board meeting to be condemned. It is a tag structure already.
I thought it was coming to the board meeting to be torn down.
No, it's coming to the board meeting to be condemned tonight. It's a process to get it torn down that we have to go through, but it has to be condemned first. Then we stapled the letters to the house.
Ms. Bercy, the notice you have there is a notice of condemnation. That's just notifying you that it's going to the board to be presented to the board for condemnation.
Okay, see, this is a personal letter you sent me, so that should be posted on the house.
Per our ordinances and per state statute, we are required to post that notification on the structure itself.
So you have no like red tag or other tag that you can put on instead of a personal letter to an individual?
That is the notification. For our tag
board meeting.
structures, we have a yellow tag that we put on the house, but for a notice of condemnation, we have to post that actual notice right there on the structure itself.
What resolution is that?
I'm
That is-
sorry, I can't quote it off the top of my head. but-
2819, I believe.
But even if it's voted to condemn tonight, they would have ample opportunity to take care of that before it's actually torn down.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
If I can recall, I just noticed, remember that board member that's currently present had a house taken off the list during this process. I don't want to.
If they come to
No, it
me,
was taken off during this meeting.
yes.
Yeah,
We did
that's
have one
perfectly
last
fine.
year.
If y'all would like to remove an address from this list, that's perfectly fine.
I just noticed that had happened before, so,
Yeah, we had one at last year's meeting.
you're right, that's what I'm saying. It
Why
happened.
was the one removed last year? Do you remember? Had they already pulled a permit?
She pulled a permit, no. She waited till the board meeting to come speak about it and wanted to pull a permit. So we wound up pulling the house and letting her pull the permit the next week. She came in, I think, 2 days after we pulled the permit.
Can you guys get that permit within the next week? Is that reasonable?
Just that he said that the work on the property has to be completed in 6 months.
The permit gives you the permission to work on the structure. What I'm saying is to avoid the condemnation.
The permits themselves are good for 6 months,
Now, if
a building permit.
this
If it's condemned,
if this building is pulled from the condemnation list, your permit is good for 6 months, but we can extend that. If the property is condemned, if the board votes to condemn the property, it has to be brought up to code within 6 months.
We need to be taken off the list.
And I got another question.
Okay.
The house that's listed on here, these are the ones that are gonna be put forward for to be towed down this year? Or what? Because,
just to be condemned.
Yes.
just to be condemned. Reason why I'm saying that, I noticed that I don't see the house on Morrison Street, right there on the corner of Morrison Park Place, with basically the whole side of the wall.
120 Park Place?
Huh?
120 Park Place?
It was one right across the street, and I know you're only limited to 2 houses
Yeah.
in an area.
Well, you can only get one on a block.
Well, this is on Morrison Street.
Okay, I'm not sure, I don't think you gave me that one this year.
Okay. And then on Washington Street, which I don't see one not ended on there, but that's probably another. But what I'm trying to say, that the houses here, are those the ones that gonna be towed down this year, or that gonna be another list that you
No,
send
some
to
of
the
these
state?
will be.
Uh-huh.
We don't have as much budget this year as what we have had, so we'll have to see how far we can get on it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So I'd like to ask that that property be removed from the list, pending they
We
get a.
close the public hearing. So if there's not any other discussion, we'll close the public hearing. Yes? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to take my properties as far as,
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I know some, the main properties, 11, 17, well, no, not 11, 17.
East 19.
17, 20, I guess?
1720
Pearl?
Yeah. I mean, as far as that property, I mean, I don't see why they're trying to condemn it for a neighbor that's complaining about it. I mean, as far as the outside structure, there's nothing really wrong with that place, or inside.
There's quite a bit on the inside.
I mean, I
It's in
haven't
pretty
seen
bad
anything.
shape.
Huh?
It's in pretty bad shape.
I mean, every time I've been there, it's been. No water to it? Well, there's no water to it because the sewer doesn't work. I mean, that's. What do you use? Well,
I mean, that's something, you got to have water.
well, I know, but nobody's living in there right now. That's what I'm saying. What do you use? Nobody's living.
Hold it.
Well, I mean, well, 3 years since my dad's died, so I mean, I haven't really did anything since then, so I don't know what to do.
Let him come to the podium.
I mean, but, I mean, as far as that, I mean, I would like to be able to work on that property. I mean, I know it needs a lot of work and stuff, but there's nothing really wrong inside the property, though, from what I saw. I've been in the property.
So Roger, just explain to him one more time if it,
And that's the only reason why I.
all right. If If it's voted to condemn, you'd have 30 days to get the necessary permits to keep it off the condemn list.
I mean, I already had two properties that, I mean, y'all already went, chopped out, that would be proper notification as far as that. And then your whole process of getting these houses, no, there's not, I mean, as far as. I mean.
You've got 30 days.
That guy's name, Mr. May.
Even if it's considered tonight, you've got 30 days to pull a permit. You pick, but it's got to be brought up to code.
Because they lie, they hit people, they do people, they hit every woman, everything. That's lie too much.
All right, we're going to close the public hearing. Is there any other discussion?
Thank you, Jesus.
We'll declare the public hearing closed. You want to take that one off?
All right, I would like to take Mr. Bursey's property off the condemned list if the board is agreeable to that, pending they get a work permit.
Josh, is a vote required for that, do you think, or
It wasn't for.
without objection of anybody, we could just remove it at this time?
Yes. We just need to note it on the.
Without any objection, we'll remove the Bursey's property. Is there any objection to that?
No objection here, Mayor.
All right. So at this time, excluding the Bursey's property, we would instruct the city attorney to read the resolution.
Whereas the Public Works Department has requested an order of condemnation under Section 11-87 of the City of Texarkana, Arkansas Code of Ordinances for the 13 substandard residential structures attached hereto as Exhibit A. I'm going to minus the 823 Laurel residence
Okay.
owned by Ray C. Bursey Jr. Whereas the owners of the listed properties have been notified that the structures on the properties are in violation of the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code and the International Property Maintenance Code, but little or no work has been done on the structures, and the allowed time period has lapsed for the owners to voluntarily bring the structures into code compliance. And whereas such structures have become dilapidated, unsightly, unsafe, unsanitary, obnoxious, or detrimental to the public welfare. And whereas the Public Works Department has attempted to notify by certified mail the last owner of record of each property, informing them that the Board of Directors will consider declaring these structures a nuisance. And whereas notices of these condemnations will be sent to the owners of record, allowing 30 days to obtain a permit for repairs or a permit to demolish the structure after giving property owners at least 10 days in which to remove any personal property. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the City of Texarkana, Arkansas, that the properties listed in Exhibit A minus the 823 Laurel residence owned by Ray C. Bursey Jr. are found to be and are condemned as a public nuisance under the provisions of Section 11-87 of the City of Texarkana, Arkansas Code of Ordinances, that the Public Works Department shall provide the owners of record with notices of the condemnations and allow 30 days for repairs or demolition by such property owners, that the Public Works Department is authorized to demolish any of the listed structures that are not repaired or demolished within the 30-day period after giving the owners at least 10 days in which to remove any personal items. Pass and approve this 18th day of February 2025.
City attorney's read the resolution. What be the desire of the board?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Let's have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Could you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
Yes.
Director Hollebush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
Yes.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, the resolution passes. Moving on to item number 5 on our agenda, just for clarification purposes, for the board to reconsider this ordinance under our rule, we'll take a 2/3 vote for the board to consider first to bring this up for reconsideration, as it was a issue that pertained to the 180 days waiting period. What would be the desire of the board to reconsider this zoning request?
Motion to reconsider.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to reconsider. It will require 5 votes to pass. Could you call the roll, please?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
No.
Director Hollebush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
No.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the resolution passes to reconsider. So at this time that we will have a request for an adoption of an ordinance to rezone the property located at 805, 807, 815 Laurel from R4 medium density residential to C3 open display commercial. Jamie.
Mr. Duffer had come back to us and asked that we bring this back to the board for reconsideration. Part of the reason being, the reason this did not go back before planning is because planning had already agreed to rezone the 4 lots. Mr. Duffer has purchased this 5th lot, but we're not discussing it tonight because he's not building on it. He's building on the 4 lots. So he has, since the original request, reconfigured his design, so it was originally coming in off Laurel, it will now come off of 8th Street here, and it will face 8th Street, where originally it was facing Laurel. So that was his reason for asking that it be reconsidered. The property is zoned R4 right now. He owns property here, and this would be a companion business to this property here, which is why he wants it on these lots. It butts up to C3, and there is C3 across the street. And his intention will be eventually to rezone this 5th lot here, C3 also. And there is water and sewer available to it. And Mr. Phoenix is here on Mr. Duffer's behalf, if you have any questions.
Any questions? If not, I remind the board that this is an ordinance to pass tonight. It would need to be read 3 times. The applicant has also requested an emergency clause. At this time, I would instruct the city attorney to read the ordinance in title form on its first reading.
An ordinance amending ordinance number K-286 as amended for declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
The ordinance has been read on its first reading. What would be the desire of the board to have it read on its second reading tonight?
Second reading, abbreviated form.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to have the ordinance read on its second reading in abbreviated form. Is there any other discussion? Could you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
Yes.
Director Hollabush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
Yes.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number K-286 as amended for declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
The ordinance has been read on its second reading. What would be the desire of the board to have it read on its third and final reading?
Third
Sec-
reading, abbreviated form.
Second.
Let's have a motion and a second to have the ordinance read on its third reading in abbreviated form. Any other discussion? Could you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
Yes.
Director Hollabush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
Yes.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number K-286 as amended for declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Ordinance has been read on its third and final reading. What would be the desire of the board to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
So a motion and a second to adopt. Prior to the board voting to adopt this particular ordinance, is there anyone here wishing to speak for or against? Ms. Bursey?
I've read to you what C3 open display is. For a retail use. Is this garage a retail use? Retail means that person has a service to the public. This business is personalized, just for that individual. It's not a retailer, so it fails C3. We don't know who we are zoning it for. Because the indication was that it belonged to Mr. Duffer, but the business name is not in Mr. Duffer's name. The city has indicated that this is a we have a historical site there, and we want to revitalize this area. Mr. Duffer has that lot that, Ms. Jamie indicated, has 3 or 4 lots there. The garages is gonna occupy 2 lots. He has down on 14 or 15, a lot that's 6 lots, that it's already fenced in, that he could put his garage. Then he has, on the other end down there by his tri-state fund, he has several lots. So why are we allowing him to come into the neighborhood that we designated downtown gateway and change for individual? When you got several people in the neighborhood that don't want it. You are taking away the desires of several citizens for one. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Barcy?
This matter has been coming, you all have been letting PUDs come in here, turn down. C3s come in, you turn down. So I want to ask the attorney, has an amendment been made for C3 that addresses retail?
Has a what? Ask it again.
Has an amendment been made?
Amendment?
C3 ordinance to address retail? Like you had an amendment to change the acreage in a PUD.
Yeah, did we amend the definition or the allowances in the C3 zone designation?
To address retail.
Not that I'm aware of.
She's talking about moving the building. That's not addressing, retail, being a retail business. That's just like the young lady and the man. They came in saying they a halfway house. Would they prefer a garage? You know, so this is gonna be nonsense. This shouldn't be coming back up in here. Now, as Mr. Travis, he always comes up there and he says he has asked David Scotty, Mr. Gerson. Now, I asked David Scotty, about Mr. Travis. Now, he owns 5 acres on East 9th, 82. Now, he can move it down there, he can get a C3, C4, a PUD, and whatever else. He has the land down there. So why don't you put it on your land? It'll be out of sight, out of mind.
Anyone else?
I have a question. Do we have any kind of issue with the personal use for versus a retail use? Is that of any issue?
No,
Ms.
sir.
Mercy
All of our commercial zonings say they're for retail. And the C3, C1, C2, and C3 all say for retail uses. C3 says this district is established in order to provide adequate locations for retail uses which serve the needs of the motoring public and are characterized by a high level of vehicular ingress and egress. Among these uses are automobile and other vehicular service establishments.
So we're confident in.
Yes, sir.
I'm Travis Phoenix. I'm here representing Bill Duffer. And one thing I'd like to remind the board and the diversity about is we're here to discuss the properties that is listed on the number 5 agenda item. It has nothing to do with any other properties that Bill Duffer owns or the feasibleness of using his other properties as opposed to this one. We're here to talk about this one. This is the 3rd time we brought it to the board. I've given a lot of information to the board. I think most people are pretty much up to speed as far as what the neighborhood is like and disrepair of the houses in general and how building something brand new on that street would actually improve the street. And actually might encourage some other economic growth because there hasn't been anything done on that street in the last basically, I'd just like to know if y'all have any questions or anything for me to answer. I'm not gonna relitigate everything unless y'all have questions.
We have a motion and a second to adopt. Is there any other discussion? If not, would you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
No.
Director Hollebush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
No.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. And the ordinance passes. They have asked for an emergency clause. What would be the desire of the emergency clause?
Motion to attach?
Second.
So have a motion and a second to attach emergency clause. Any other discussion?
What's the rationale behind the emergency clause?
I guess
know
so he
this
could
been
get
going
started.
on since,
I'm assuming he could get started.
Oh, well, he already started.
Well, and that was clarified. Jamie, would you please clarify that again, since there was some discussion about dirt work and stuff being done on that property prior to the rezoning?
You don't need a permit or permission to do dirt work.
All right. Any other discussion? What would be the desire of the emergency clause?
Motion to attach.
Motion.
Do we have a second? All right, do we have it? Motion and a second to attach. Any other discussion? Could you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
No.
Director Hollebush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
Yes.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, and the emergency clause is attached. Moving on to item number 6, which is to adopt an ordinance, amend ordinance number 10, 2018, to adjust the bulk item pickup fee schedule to include one free pickup bi-monthly. Tracy?
This is simply just to, we already have a fee scheduled for a Dollar Truck, but we wanted to add the free pickup by month, one free pickup for our citizens.
I think one of the things that I read that's worth reiterating, in my opinion, pointing out, this does not include apartments, those complexes.
Yes, sir, it does not include apartments, it's a single-family residence.
And how are we going to be prepared to get out the word on what we will pick up and where it needs to be?
Yes, sir, we've already prepared a flyer, it should be attached to y'all's agenda, and it includes everything that will not be picked up.
Any other discussions for Tracy?
I got
Yes.
From what I found out, I guess getting the word out. Lots of people don't have social media. Some people don't get the newspaper. I guess everybody's not looking at TV. But how's you really gonna get the word out? Because I did know when you did it for January and February, I had passed out some flyers in my ward, but and I still maybe need to find out, based on the flyers that I passed out, how many phone calls have you got so far? How many pickups have you done? Maybe I can,
I can get that to you.
but my thing is, how is the people really gonna get notice of this, and take advantage of this?
Director Harris, I think the best that we can do is put it out on all the media channels. I mean, we're not able to go door to door and put in flowers, and we're not able to put mailers in the water bills anymore, since we have a third party doing those water bills now. I'll double check on that to be certain, but we'll look into whatever avenues we have to get the word out.
But when you mention water bill, is in the way, could it be printed on the back of the water bill?
When I have spoken, it's been a year and a half, 2 years since I spoke with TWU about putting something in with the water bill. I'll have to speak with Gary about it again, but
No, not
best
putting it
I
on
can.
the water, in the water bill, just printed on the back. of
Right,
the-
yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. But last I knew, we weren't able to do that. Like I said, I'll speak with Gary about it again, but I'm not sure that, I don't believe we're able to.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Yes. Big bulk items, pick up, like couches and.
Bi-monthly.
Every other month.
Every
It's 1 week out of that month, by month.
every 2 months, every other month.
Any other discussion? I remind the board that this is an ordinance. I would instruct the city attorney to read the ordinance in its title form on its first reading.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 10-2018 in the city of Texarkana, Arkansas Code of Ordinances to adjust the bulk item pickup fee schedule to include one free pickup on a bi-monthly basis for declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Ordinance has been read on its first reading. What would be the desire to have it read on its second reading?
Second
Mayor,
reading.
Move,
Go ahead.
suspend the rules and place the ordinance on the second reading.
Let's have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to have the ordinance read on its second reading, abbreviated form. Any other discussion? Would you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris.
Yes.
Director Hollibush.
Yes.
Director Brewer.
Yes.
Director Jewell.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Director Roberts.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 10-2018 in the city of Texarkana, Arkansas Code of Ordinances to adjust the bulk item pickup fee schedule to include one free pickup on a bi-monthly basis for declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Ordinance has been read on its second reading. What would be the desire of the board to have it read on its third reading?
Third reading, abbreviated form, please.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to have the ordinance read on its third reading in abbreviated form. Any other discussion? Would you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris.
Yes.
Director Hollibush.
Yes.
Director Brewer.
Yes.
Director Jewell.
Yes.
Director Roberts.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Director Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 10-2018 in the city of Texarkana, Arkansas Code of Ordinances to adjust the bulk item pickup fee schedule to include one free pickup on a bi-monthly basis for declaring an emergency and for other purposes.
Ordinance has been read on its third and final reading. What would be the desire of the board to adopt?
Motion to adopt ordinance.
Second.
So have a motion and a second to adopt. Prior to the board voting to adopt this particular ordinance, is there anyone here wishing to speak for or against? Seeing and hearing none, would you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris.
Yes.
Director Hollibush.
Yes.
Director Brewer.
Yes.
Director Jewell.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Director Roberts.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. The Public Works staff has asked for an emergency clause. What would be the desire of the board?
Move for adoption, emergency clause.
Second.
Let's have a motion and a second to attach an emergency clause. Any other discussion? Could you call the roll?
Assistant Mayor Harris.
Yes.
Director Hollibush.
Yes.
Director Brewer.
Yes.
Director Jewell.
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Director Roberts.
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, an emergency clause is attached. Moving on to our last item on our agenda tonight is item number 7, to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a conciliation agreement with the Department of Housing and Urban Development regarding the property located at 14 Downing Drive. Tyler.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all are well aware, we've had lengthy discussions over this for the last year. Unfortunately, our attorney, Annie Depper, was stuck in Little Rock due to all the bad weather, so she's here with us virtually. But we have a conciliation agreement here before you, and I'll let Annie take over from here.
Hello? Can you hear us?
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Glad to be with your video. Again, my name is Amy Deckler, and I'm with Keithway Campbell Law Firm in Little Rock. I apologize for not getting there. I really wanted to be there this evening, but I'm glad that we have the opportunity for video. So as Tyler was stating, the issue before the board tonight is the issue related to this conciliation agreement. This is a conciliation agreement between HUD and the respondents, which are the city of Texarkana, Tyler Richards, and Jamie Finley. A little bit of background, I know all of y'all are aware of this, but just to kind of frame this issue for the board. HUD had applied for a rezoning, this occurred back in 2024, in January of 2024. HUD was seeking to operate a group home at this location at 14 Downing Drive. HUD went before the zoning commission, it was denied. That denial was January 9th of 24, and then appealed to the board of directors, to all of you, appealed that denial. That was on February 5th, 2024, and that appeal of the denial was denied by this board. Subsequently, HUD filed a complaint with HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Let me walk you a little bit through that process. So once a complainant files a complaint with HUD, HUD begins the process of investigating that complaint. So at that time, it was around the time that my law firm came in to represent City of Texarkana and Tyler Richards and Jamie Finley. So HUD does that investigation. Through it, they request various documents from the city, request that we respond to various questions or interrogatories, and sometimes they will conduct depositions or interviews. They call them simply interviews. So they went through that process. We provided them with documents. And during that same time, what I was doing was reviewing all those documents, collecting my own, reviewing minute meetings before the commission and before this board, reviewing the video of those meetings, and analyzing it under the structure of the Fair Housing Act, the FHA. In that complaint that HUD had with HUD, HUD was complaining that they were discriminated against, under the Fair Housing Act, particularly as a particular group, and that's a group of disabled or handicapped. As I think you all are aware, that individuals who are recovering from drug addiction are contained within that protected group of the disabled or the handicapped. What I did was review all the records, review minute meetings, review videos, and apply that, compare that to cases, right? What do courts look at? What would this look like if we landed in court? And I became very concerned at some statements that were made in emails, very concerned at some statements that were made at meetings. And that indicated to me that there was the potential here for liability on the city's behalf. Now, a little bit of, let me walk you through what HUD can do, right? HUD performs their investigation. If they find that there is no indication of any discrimination, they can close it and be done. If they find that there is some indication of that, there's probable cause to determine that there was some discrimination under the Fair Housing Act, they have two options. They can refer it to the DOJ. If they refer to the Department of Justice, then the Department of Justice has the option of filing a lawsuit against the city in federal district court. HUD also has an alternative. They can file what's called a charge against the city. If they do that, and instead of federal district court, it lands in front of an administrative law judge, an ALJ. Okay, so those are the two paths HUD can take if they determine that there is evidence of discrimination. If you go through the DOJ files a lawsuit against the city, then you land in federal district court, you go through the process of that discovery, you then land in front of a jury. At the end of that, there are options there if the city loses, that damages can be assessed against the city. The judge could order that HUD be allowed to operate at that location. The judge could also impose civil penalties. So those are, and in addition to that, attorney's fees. The administrative law judge has the same options in front of she or he if they hear this case. Right? So those are the two options in front of HUD, or in front of HUD. HUD also has her own options, right? Carlotta Powell, who is the executive director of HUD, can at any time file a lawsuit against the city. Say, city, you discriminated against me for the Fair Housing Act and the group, my group home. So I'm filing a lawsuit in federal district court. Again, like if the DOJ filed a lawsuit, we'd be in federal district court and go through all of that process, right? As I said earlier, I reviewed everything that I could in this case to make an educated determination of what the liability would be like for the city if we landed in federal district court or in front of an ALJ. My review of that documentation, minutes, videos, was very concerning. Said that there was a risk here, a real risk for the city to be liable if this landed in front of a judge, in front of a court. And so what steps are taken then? Right? What can you do? Well, one option, in any case, it's called settlement. Now, we're in front of HUD right now, HUD investigation, so this would not be a quote-unquote settlement. It is called a conciliation, that at the end of the day is practically the same thing, okay? So these discussions were had with HUD, with the HUD investigator and Mr. Ryan Dove, and he would go between me and the attorney for HUD Jason Aller. I think he attended one of the meetings that y'all held, and he's with legal aid. Ultimately, we came to the terms of this agreement that I think all of y'all have seen at this time. In any conciliation agreement, you have to have two things. One, relief for the complainant, so relief for heard. Two, relief in the public interest, and that's what HUD pushes for what they need, kind of a general public interest requirement that's contained in the conciliation agreement. So the relief for heard would be that heard, and only heard, is able to operate a group home having up to 12 individuals at the location of 14 Downing Drive. The relief in the public interest that HUD always has to have in these conciliation agreements is that the city would agree that certain city officials who deal with housing would receive training under the FHA, under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and under the ADA. And then in addition to that, that the city passed an ordinance that would allow a process for group homes to request a special use permit. City has already done that. HUD is aware of that. I have sent that ordinance to HUD. So in terms of that requirement, the city has already met it if the city determines to enter into this conciliation agreement. So my advice, based on being an attorney for the city of Texarkana, all of the review that I've done, and I've reviewed a lot, spoken with Municipal League about this, reached out to other attorneys who have also dealt with this in the past. And my recommendation is that there is some risk here for the city. How do you avoid that? The potential of litigation on this issue of discrimination. You do it through a conciliation agreement. And that is the agreement before you, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody? Yes, Director.
I guess from the meeting you talking about, is you talking about when this first came up, before this really came, when the citizen came up and spoke about this, before this actually came, before it became a vote?
Did you hear that, Andy?
I think I did, and I think, is that Director Harris speaking?
Right, right.
Sure, Director Harris, so I looked at two different meetings that the Board of Directors held. One was, you're correct, it came up for the Board of Directors. It was not formally in front of the Board of Directors, but it was addressed because citizenry had some concerns, and there were various comments made by the board before it was before the board, okay? So that was one of the meetings that I reviewed. The other was the meeting at which the appeal of denial was denied by the board.
Okay.
Follow on with that question. Were those concerns at that meeting, were they considered as evidence?
Yes.
I just want to hear you say that.
Yeah, so I'll speak to one. When you're looking at these issues of discrimination, right, you're looking at various types of claims of discrimination. And for each different type of claim, what you look at is factors that courts consider when making a determination of whether discrimination occurred, okay? And one of those factors can be if there was any kind of change in how things went in the meeting, or didn't go exactly according to, the issue was in front of you, it wasn't in front of you, but still there were a lot of statements made about it. So there could be, that's going down the road of factors that courts consider.
Any other questions for Andy?
Thank you.
I want to make sure, is that Director Brewer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Annie and Steve, I have a question. We heard earlier from Mr. Huff, who provided some information that he was able to find. I'm not sure where it came from or if it's law, but it speaks to number of residents allowed per room. It spoke to the number of bathrooms available that could be provided. Would the conciliation agreement supersede any of what he was able to find and provide?
Right, so Director Smith, as I understand it, it was a little bit difficult to hear some of the citizens who were speaking, but I tried to take notes best I could. I did hear, I think that gentleman speak to a statute that he had maybe found under the FHA, or regulation under the FHA that had to deal with group homes. I will tell you, whenever I'm speaking in front of a board of directors or any kind of governmental entity, usually citizens find statutes, right, and regulations. I could not hear exactly the one he was specifically referring to. I would have to look specifically at that one. But I will tell you the way these statutes are set up, right? They are huge. In addition to that, they have tons of regulation under them. And so you can find a subsection that won't apply to what you're dealing with here. Now, all of that said, if there is additional federal law that HERD would have to meet or comply with, or if there's other state law that they would need to meet or comply with, or city ordinances or code that they would need to meet or comply with, they still would be required to do so. That gentleman also mentioned the ADA, right, and the issue of public access, handicap access. ADA applies to public buildings, right? HERD is not a public entity, and so HERD can do what it wants to with its own building regarding handicap access.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna have quite a few questions, so if anybody else.
I just got one more. I noticed that we used to have a fair housing person here for Texas County, Arkansas. We do not have one at present, and I think it's probably been over the last 10 years, maybe more than that, since we had a fair housing person. Should the city try to engage by hiring a fair housing person or designate that ability or duty to someone here?
And Director Harris, I don't know if I heard everything, but it sounded like you asked if maybe it would be important or good for the city to have a fair housing director.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, right? The Fair Housing Act can get very complicated. And to have someone there who has expertise in it might be beneficial, but you also have an excellent city attorney who can advise on that. And in addition to that, based on this conciliation agreement, the individuals with the city who will be touching on housing will receive that training. And I think that training is important really for any city to have it because it can get very complicated under the Fair Housing Act.
Okay.
Any other questions before Director Jewell? Director Jewell.
Ms. Depper, I'm Danny Jewell. You and I have talked several times, I believe. I believe you know my position in this, very much oppose this agreement. Let me ask, was the concerns of the neighborhood ever given any weight or any consideration in this agreement? Or your discussions with HUD, was that ever a consideration as to their concerns? Or was it just to save the city money as far as any financial penalties that might be imposed by by HUD?
No, I mean, I think HUD always tries to take into consideration, and they deal with these cases all the time.
I'm not asking about HUD. I'm asking about your position as far as arguing the the city's position as well as the neighborhood. Did you argue the neighborhood's position in this?
I certainly informed HUD of what the neighbors' concerns were, right? And so what we look at when we're determining the potential liability, and I hear what you're saying, Director Jewell, Ms. Depper, did you take into account the issue of the concerns of these citizens?
Yes.
And I absolutely did, right? Courts address that all the time in these cases, and what they look at is, what are the concerns of the neighbors, right? Have those concerns been made known? Are those concerns something that can be considered discriminatory? And if they are, is that something that the board of directors took into account, right? So in all of the cases that you review, you will see that the courts are looking at the concerns of the citizenry. And so that is something that I was thinking about as I was reviewing all the minutes, as I reviewed all the emails that came in. There were many emails that came in from neighbors, obviously very concerned. I listened to all the citizen comments, and so took all of that into account when I was looking at this potential of what road to go down, right? How to advise the client. Those are things that are always considered.
But was it given more weight, though, to protect the city's financial interest? I mean, your decision to advise the city to enter in this agreement seems to be more to save the city of any financial penalties. Is that not the case?
That is not the case, Director Jewell. And so what I do is, my job is not to tell the city, this is what you must do, right?
But that's your advice, though, isn't it?
Hang on. What I said when I started and I gave you kind of an outline of what happened and where this went, my job is to express to the city whether I think liability is there or not, whether I think there is the chance of the city having having to pay damages at the end of this, having a judgment against them at the end of this, having to pay attorney's fees, those types of things. Now, I advise all of my clients, and I say, these are the things that I think you need to consider. These are concerns that I have. It is up to you if you want to pursue this conciliation agreement or not, but your attorney is saying that there are some very serious concerns here, and I am expressing those. Now, when discussing citizenry, right, and whether that's taken into consideration, as I told you, what I look at are the cases, how the courts address these types of cases. And so I'm not a politician, right? I'm not elected. And so I'm just here to do my job as an attorney and say, these are my concerns as an attorney. Reading these cases, this is what I see, and that's what I did. I don't have the very difficult job of being a politician and needing to listen to the concerns of the citizenry. And I don't envy y'all for that.
Right. Well, I think as the elected politician you're referring to, my primary duty is to look out for these people that elected me and to worry about the finances as a secondary reason to enter into this agreement, which absolutely leaves all these people out. And your concerns are, I believe, based on comments or emails or whatever. Those comments, emails, are they from directors, planning commissioners? Are they from city personnel? Okay, so the mess that we're in is kind of our own fault, right? The politicians, city staff, the planning commissioners, it's our fault. But yet, we're asking these people, we're not asking, we're demanding these people pay for our error by imposing on them this conciliation agreement, which is going to impose on them more noise, wear out their streets more, subject them to parking issues with 12 people in the house. So we're asking these people to pay for our mistake, in essence, by entering in this agreement. Do you not agree?
And Director Jewell, I'm not here to place fault on anyone, right? That's not my job here to say this is the person that did wrong. My job here is just to review everything I can and go, this is the risk that the city faces.
Okay.
So if y'all want to dole out fault between you, that's fine, but that's not my job as the attorney. I analyze the case and I give you my best recommendation as an attorney.
Okay. Well, that's okay. The city's primary responsibility, as I see it before us right now, is not considering a conciliation agreement, but it is to the people of Downing. By enforcing this zoning requirement, by not enforcing the zoning requirement of R2, which is the most restrictive residential district, this board certainly will not be considering the betterment of the Downing neighborhood. Actually, this board is telling these people that we really don't care what this does to you. And I hope all of you people, the directors, if you're going to vote against this, will look at these people and tell them that we really don't care. We're worried more about our finances than we are what this is going to do to your neighborhood. The city has been scared, in my view, the city has been scared into accepting this agreement by a one-man HUD investigative team. Has scared our attorneys into accepting this agreement because of the fear of having to pay a possible fine of up to $500,000 over the concerns of the neighborhood. Now, again, I'm speaking as the elected representative of these people versus having to possibly write a check. But I think it's my duty owed to these people because we caused this mess. And I think it's on us to fight it to the end, to go to court, whatever it takes, to see that these people's rights to enjoy the privilege of living in a residential zone and not be encumbered by I want to use the right word, recovery residence that has 14 people in it. I maintain we should not agree to any settlement
What about?
that totally disregards the concerns of the people in the neighborhood. But mostly, being that we caused this problem, we owe it to these people to stay in the fight until some court, some agency determines that we, the city, has violated some rule instead of folding right at the outset. And of course, I'll never agree to any settlement, but you certainly don't settle at the very beginning of any kind of litigation. So I think this is totally unfair to the neighborhood. And also by settling, accepting this agreement, it will prohibit us, in my view, from bringing any kind of action against AARP, I believe is how you pronounce it. And to me, they have some liability in this, in that they didn't enforce their policies that would have required, and still, in my view, requires HURD to come in compliance with the zoning requirements. It's clearly indicated that they were to be in compliance with the zoning requirements before they got their money. They did not do that. And also, this is rewarding a organization that was disingenuous in their application, and I do not think that's proper. Don't think we should be awarding somebody to make false statements on their application. And HUD should have enforced their provisions and prevented that. So I think the city should take action against AARP, and by entering in this agreement will, in essence, prevent us from doing such. And against, I'm against the settlement totally, but I have some concerns with the settlement itself. If the board decides to go that route, like the up to 12 individuals without, the agreement has no requirements of any kind of safety regulations. It just says that we will allow them to operate a recovery residence at 14 Downing to accommodate 12 individuals. Why is there not some requirements as to safety concerns? Some kind of, that they will comply with some kind of something. You know, I think, talking to Tyler, it may be implied, but it should have been spelled out in the agreement, in my view. If this is a negotiation, why is it not spelled out and they will comply with such and such ordinances per whatever? But this to me is just an open, a blank check to do whatever they want to, just as long as, and operate in total disregard of our laws in the city of Texarkana, ordinances in the city of Texarkana, Arkansas. Also, it says this agreement will remain in effect for the duration of their operation. How long is the duration of their operations? How long does this go on? A corporation as you know, is perpetual unless it's revoked or rescinded. Is this going on for 30 years? Are we agreeing to this for 30 years, 50 years, 100 years? Can these people operate for that time, for that length of time? So,
Could someone please explain how the city has discriminated against her?
again, I think that's a good point. How's the city discriminate against her in your, I guess, by your comments, by what you're saying, comments made by individuals?
That is correct. Comments made in various issues related to the process through which the request from her was reviewed.
And that was by public individuals, right? Probably on planning commission, the directors or something like that?
Some of that and some a combination of comments made by citizenry in response from directors.
Those were decisions or actions.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Those were
hear.
not decisions by the board, and they were not actions by the board. I'm sorry, Miss Depper's not going to be able to hear you. You don't have a mic. I don't believe she's going to be able to hear you.
Yeah, again, he's saying they had, that the public didn't really have a decision in whether the application was denied.
No actions by the board that were discriminatory, were there?
Right, so what you have to do is look at the case law and what the courts review when they're determining if something was discriminatory, okay? What they look at are various comments made. It doesn't have to be a particular action. It can be various comments made by council members, by commissioners, by neighbors that are adopted by council or commissioners. It can be differences in the process. And I will state this, I'm happy to discuss more specifics. I think that at this time, it would not be appropriate to discuss very specifics with regard to litigation, which the city may face down the road. But I will say that those are factors that courts look at. So it doesn't have to be just a decision that is made. They look at a decision made, and then they look at what's called the totality of the circumstances around that decision, right? That's what courts look at in determining whether there was discrimination.
Yes, Ms. Weir is.
Pardon?
So as you're a lawyer, correct?
Yes, she.
So as a lawyer, what happens if the grant was given access prior to rezoning and wasn't done so in an ethical manner? How can we trust that this is to be implemented with fidelity if it was not even acquired through the proper channels? Why didn't you mention that today when you're mentioning another lawsuit? And, okay. And, why is evidence-based research considered discriminatory? Because what I heard today here, was evidence-based for the majority. It was statistics, it was lived experiences, it's advocates that have released this information. Why didn't you present the argument for what the city could potentially countersue for if the proper protocols and procedures were not followed to attain the, whatever she needed to rezone? Why
I'm
would
really
you-
sorry. I apologize. A lot of that was mumbled and very, very quick. I can tell you, the issue that you brought up at the end was why didn't I bring up issues that the city could actually sue for? So when you're looking at discrimination, right, all the court is deciding at that time is discrimination, right? Did the city take some kind of action that could be considered discriminatory? They're not bringing in other things that happen that don't have to do with that particular discriminatory action. And I'm sorry, I heard you mention something about evidence-based research, and I missed that.
I was saying that tonight I didn't hear discriminatory stuff. I heard evidence-based research, and I don't consider evidence-based research discriminatory.
Right, so evidence-based research, when people are bringing up things like people who are recovering from drug addiction are more likely to commit crime, right? That can be seen as discriminatory because you are saying that you don't want these people to live here. I don't make the case law, it's just out there, right? But when you make those types of statements, it's understood that the reason that you don't want those people to move into a certain location is because they are recovering addicts. And a recovering addict is part of a protected class, right? And so I understand, like, these cases are going on around the country, and I understand people's frustration with them, but you have to get your head in that mindset of what's going on in these cases. And again, I don't write the opinions for the judges, right? I read them, I interpret them, and I try to advise my client appropriately. I understand this is difficult for everyone. I'm not here to just be the bearer of bad news, but I do have to be honest in my analysis.
So when you're saying there is case law to support that, then there also has to be case law for the opposite. Correct.
So one of the issues that I think you're bringing up is something maybe related to reasonable accommodation, where they bring in evidence-based research, and they're talking about, or something that's called not inherent discrimination, but another type of discrimination, that then you start bringing in statistics in that research. There is not a case that I have come across where they say, well, because you cited that addicts are more likely, former addicts are more likely to commit crime, because of that, they don't have to move in. I have not found that case.
Okay, is there case law regarding how a grant was received prior to rezoning in a neighborhood?
No. So that brings up a separate issue. And I've certainly heard over and over from many people that there are questions about the grant application. There are various questions about HERD itself, right? But that's separate. So we're dealing with the discrimination issue, right? The court would address the discrimination issue. The complaint with HUD is the discrimination issue. You wanted to bring up all of these other things, that is separate.
Right.
I mean, it can be I messed up an application, or I have other problems related to my business, but I still came in and asked the city to allow me to operate a group home in a particular location. It was denied, and I say it was discrimination, right? That's separate from how I messed up on a grant. That's separate from whatever other issues that are going on with my business. This is a straight question of discrimination.
Okay, so you're saying that another lawsuit regarding the other thing could not be addressed, and you also said that you're assuming there was a mistake on an application? What if that wasn't the case?
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again?
You just said that there was a mistake on an application. What if that wasn't the case and it wasn't a mistake? What if it was intentional?
Oh, that again would also be a separate issue on the issue.
But we could pursue that. We could pursue that legally, or no?
I don't know, I'm not here to give opinions on what the city can pursue regarding a grant application. I was tasked with reviewing the evidence with regards to a discrimination claim, and that's what I did. If you want me to go down the road of options for the city on suing someone, I'm not here. I certainly haven't gotten up to speed enough to give any opinion on that.
Okay.
But, Ms. Depper, sorry, Danny Jewell again. But if we accept this, agree to this conciliation agreement, it's pretty much going to prevent us from pursuing action against AARP, because we've already agreed to accept, to allow HUD to operate. So we pretty much just abandon any real reason to go after AARP if we accept its conciliation agreement, right? Wouldn't you think?
The conciliation agreement doesn't prevent the city from pursuing whatever it needs to pursue against AARP, right? There could certainly be an argument that by entering into this agreement that the city can't pursue that, but there's nothing in this agreement. This agreement is strictly between the complainant and the respondent. That's it. There's no other party to this agreement. It is just between those two parties. There's nothing in this agreement that says the city can't pursue what it needs to pursue if it needs to pursue something against AARP. There is nothing in this agreement that says that HERD doesn't have to comply with building codes. And in fact, I spoke with HUD about that very issue, and HUD said absolutely they still have to comply with building codes. So this is not granting a blanket to ignore every ordinance or every regulation or every code that the city has. This is specific to her making a complaint that the city discriminated against it, and the city entering into this settlement agreement, this conciliation, specific to that complaint.
Is there any other questions of the board?
I just got one.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say one word. There is abatement law on the books, and just leave it at that.
Pardon me?
There's abatement laws on the Arkansas, in the state of Arkansas.
An abatement law doesn't apply here.
No, I'm not trying to say, I'm trying to tell them that if they.
Annie, you said it's a conciliation agreement between two parties. Just so I understand correctly, it's three. It's the city, it's HUD, and it's HUD, correct?
So HUD isn't technically a party to this agreement. HUD manages the agreement and then makes sure that HUD gets what HUD wants out of this agreement between two parties, okay? So HUD is, they're technically not a party, although they kind of are in the shadows in that they want the public relief, and then they want to make sure that the training's provided, and that they can monitor to make sure that the city has complied with it. So technically not a party, but you know, they're taking action and not taking action within the agreement that, I mean, I could call them a quasi-party.
But the agreement's not binding until HUD signs, the third signature is acquired.
That is correct. So anytime you have a conciliation agreement, not only does it have to be approved by the parties, the complainant and the respondent, HUD has to sign off as well, right? And for an example, they wouldn't sign off if there wasn't some type of public interest part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And if we as a board, if the settlement agreement is voted to not be signed, and we do decide to go and it gets to the DOJ or the other avenue that you mentioned, it's my understanding that in the event that we fight and we were to lose in court down the road, the judge could still rule in favor of Ms. Powell and HUD, and they would still be able to operate?
Right, so one of the things that anytime you're in a district court, in front of a district court judge or in front of an ALJ, right, one of the things they can grant is equitable relief. So equitable relief would be if they determined that the city in fact did discriminate, then they could order, okay, city, you discriminated. You must allow her to operate in that location.
Even
That
if,
would be an option.
even if it's against the current zoning that the city has in place?
Correct, so federal law trumps.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ms. Dipper.
Zoning doesn't matter, so I can operate one of these in Northern Hills, Sugar Hill, and everywhere I want to go with them? Or was it changed after the fact by the city that now y'all are all protected in your neighborhoods? Because that's exactly what we're having.
Ms. Dipper, the court could also rule that the city violated no regulation, no HUD regulation. Is that not right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
The court could also rule that the city violated no regulation, right? They could rule anything, right? So we could end up, yes, we could wind up paying.
In federal court, you'd be in a jury, they could fine for her. If
This is-
they discriminated. At the same time, they could fine for the city if you have no
Yes,
discrimination.
this is all unknown, but yet we know if we accept this conciliation agreement that we are going to damage these people by subjecting them to what a 12-member recovery house will do to their neighborhood. Tear up the roads, have more people parking in the streets, and all that. That's a no. But we're entering into an agreement of the unknown as far as it relates to avoiding a sanction by HUD, but we know what we're doing to these people. And that should be the primary concern of this board, as what we're doing to these people, instead of the possibility of what HUD may do to us for what we possibly goofed up on in making comments that may be construed as discriminatory. So, my last statement is, guys, look at these people. And remember that you owe it to them to vote this ridiculous conciliation agreement, to vote against this thing.
I do have one question. I don't know, this is Terry Roberts, and is there a consideration, because you've cited case law, is there consideration, I know it from circuit court to state court to federal court, if someone acts with malice or not? Because there's a huge difference, in my opinion, when somebody acts intentionally with malice or when you're having a conversation with somebody. I mean, is that something that is any case law that you are aware of?
No. And so, when you're looking at, it's called intentional discrimination. There doesn't have to be, you can maybe give me more information than you want. You can go down two routes if you're a plaintiff. You can present evidence of intentional discrimination, which is someone saying, I don't want them moving in there because they are named the protected class, right? Or they can have indirect evidence, right? That indirect evidence is what I'm talking about when you're talking about statements here or there. But that indirect evidence can also support intentional discrimination, right? So you don't have to have malice there in either route. It's just two ways to get at the same point, which is this is evidence of intentional discrimination.
So that could be deemed taken in context or out of context, but that would be for a judge to decide.
Right, so then you're getting to weighing the evidence, right? And listening to testimony and the credibility of witnesses, and a witness coming in and saying, yes, I said X, but I didn't mean it the way it sounded, right? And so then courts or jurors would look at all the evidence surrounding that, right? What was the topic everyone was discussing? What other comments have been made? To determine if that witness, the credibility of the witness, to say, do we believe that person when they say that or not? So you're right, any type of evidence that we're talking about, statements, emails, any of that, minutes, all of that, right? It all gets presented to a jury or an ALJ, and then it's challenged, right? Both sides challenge it and try to present evidence that will say, read it my way. This is how you should read that statement. Right? So that happens in every case.
Thank you.
You said judge or jury. How would it be determined where it landed?
I didn't get the last part.
You said judge or it's Steve, Annie. You said judge or jury. How would it be determined where it landed? In front of a jury, in front of a judge? You mentioned two different routes it could go.
Sure. So one route, when I talked about HUD going before an ALJ, if HUD issued a charge, we would be in front of an ALJ. ALJ, administrative law judge, there's no jury. So that's the judge having a hearing, which would basically be a mini trial, and making the determination. Okay? When you're in federal district court, everyone's entitled to a jury trial. So we would go to a jury trial. However, once you're through discovery, you get through all the depositions, all of the record production, all of that, then big motions are filed in front of that judge. Say, judge, both sides can file what's called a motion for summary judgment. That motion says, listen, we win. Look at the evidence, judge, we win. So the judge would make a determination at that point, looking at all the evidence, to decide, does someone just win outright? Or is there enough dispute here to go to a jury? Okay, so you have a portion there, in any case it's going to a jury trial, a portion of it that the judge will address, right? And then if you go further, if both sides get past summary judgment, then it's all decided by a jury.
Okay.
And I have one question.
And it's dependent, that solely depends on the judge and the way that he interprets it, correct?
Yeah. So each individual judge, although they are certainly guided by the case law.
Yes, just to be clear, from my understanding, we have a commercial business for profit that's going into a residential community. Is that what we're indicating here, right? And so, being that it's residential, I know you're saying we're dealing directly with the discrimination. So the planning and zoning will not be taken into consideration at all for this business to go into this residential neighborhood. Is that what I'm understanding?
I'm I'm really sorry that I have to keep asking you to repeat. It's just coming through garbled.
I'm gonna move over here to the mic just a little bit. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, what I was doing, just asking for clarification. So what I understand is this commercial business, for profit, is moving into this residential area, being that they violated the going into a residential area. And I understand you say we're just going to deal directly with the discrimination, but would that have any weight as far as how we even got to this point that there's a discrimination because they bypassed a commercial going into a residential that was already pre-zoned?
Yes, I think you're asking if the zoning issue has any effect on any decision of maybe a court moving forward on whether there was discrimination or not. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I'm asking is, even if the evidence, all that stuff, is it really relevant because of what was, the rule was broken at the very beginning with being that was R2 before they can get to these other levels. So that's what I'm asking. Would that have any weight on perhaps, pushing out that discrimination because of what was violated in the beginning?
So like I said, right, the courts look at the totality of the circumstances to determine if there was any discrimination.
Yes.
Right? And so that, I think what you're saying is, listen, in the beginning, she, tried to go ahead and move forward and she was in the wrong zone, then asked for a variance or made an application for it to be rezoned. Does that problem, right, that problem she created come in at all on this issue of discrimination? Okay? Now, like I said, courts look at the totality of the circumstances, but I think that I'm going to call it wrong she committed, right? Putting that in air quotes, that wrong she committed, so I don't know enough about it to know whether she did or not. But that would be certainly taken into an account by the court, but I don't think it would hold a lot of weight in looking at totality of the circumstances of whether there was discrimination.
All right, thank you. Okay.
All right, any other board member? Any other board member?
I'd just like one more statement.
Okay.
Looks like, it looks like the emphasis again is on, is whether the board has discriminated and how we take care of that situation instead of what we owe to the citizens out there. We owe the citizens the duty to take this to the court and to see if the court, let the court make the determination whether we discriminated or not whether our attorney has decided or thinks maybe that we have discriminated or whatever, or someone else has the opinion possibly we discriminated. We need to have a definite ruling by a U.S. District Court or somebody to tell us that we were in violation and we have to pay some money instead of making these people pay for the wrong that we did to them by making perhaps inappropriate remarks. That's, I guess, all I have to say.
Any other board member?
To wrap this up, Annie, basically, the settlement agreement that's in front of us basically states that the board recognizes that we are being accused of discriminatory comments and that we are not agreeing that said comments were stated. And if we vote to settle, she can't come back with anything, Hurd can't come back with anything with this discrimination. It allows her to operate, the discriminatory accusations are dropped. The residents, the neighbors have spoken about other concerns. All of those items you said yourself were separate from this. this settlement agreement doesn't prevent them from pursuing that or looking further into it, correct?
Yeah, so private citizens can do whatever private citizens want to do, right? That's, I'm representing the city in this and the city's interest in this conciliation agreement. Okay, so private citizens have no control over what they do, and I'm certainly not here to offer them legal advice. This agreement is only binding on the complainant, Heard, and the respondent, the city of Texarkana, Tyler Richards, and Jamie Finley. Okay, those are the only parties to this agreement. In addition, Director, you were correct that once this is signed, Heard is waiving its ability to file a lawsuit against the city for this alleged act of discrimination. Okay, and you're right, it's alleged. We don't admit to any of it in the conciliation agreement. In fact, we deny that any discrimination occurred. But Heard has been waiving its right to file a lawsuit against the city. The only way that any of this can rear its head again would be if there was, retaliation taken against them by the city after this. If the city didn't actually do what it was supposed to do and allow her to live there. If the city didn't do its training, HUD could come in because they get to monitor and go, hang on guys, you said you would do this training and you didn't, okay? So as long as we, meet our requirements under this agreement, done. Right? As long as there's no retaliation against her by the city, done.
How long?
Thank you.
How long is the duration of their operation? That's not defined. What?
So the monitoring by HUD would be if HUD has a year to monitor.
No,
So the agreement allows her to operate her group home there as long as HUD's around.
Again, for 50 years?
Indefinitely.
Indefinite, 50 or 100 years? Pardon me?
But it doesn't allow, I can't anticipate how long it will be around, but it doesn't allow any other group home. This is just with her. Only her can operate there.
50 or 100 years, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
50 or 100 years, correct? Up to, whatever. There's no time limit. And so the city can impose on her reasonable safety procedures, reasonable safety safeguards in that house, right? If we sign off.
Its code.
Pardon me?
The city can enforce its code. The city has a code.
Where is that?
Enforcement regarding standards of safety, fire code. The city can continue to enforce that as it does against every house in the area, every building in the area. The city has the ability to do that, and they can do it.
Where is that covered in the agreement?
It doesn't state that in the agreement because it doesn't need to be stated. HERD has to follow the city ordinances and the code.
Any other discussion?
Well, I
Yes,
just need
okay.
to make something clear when I said abatement law. Abatement law basically means that if you're getting so many complaints at a resident, you're getting so many this going on at a resident, you can file, it's a state law to have something to do with abatement. So that's why I'm getting it, but, when I say abatement law.
Nuisance abatement.
But you got to get evidence to establish that right now. You don't have no evidence that it's abatement law. It's in violation of that.
Any other discussion? If not, I would inform the city attorney to read the resolution and remind the board that this is a resolution. It would require 4 votes. A yes vote is to authorize the city manager to execute the conciliation agreement. A no vote is to not authorize him not to sign it. Did you read the resolution?
Whereas a complaint was filed with the Department of Housing and Urban Development by Helping Every Attic Recover Daily, alleging discriminatory practices related to their operation of a recovery residence located at 14 Downing Drive, Texarkana, Arkansas. And whereas the city denies and disputes the claims of discriminatory practices, and whereas in order to avoid protracted litigation and the associated uncertainties, time, and expense associated with the same, the city, HUD, and HERD have reached an agreement for the settlement and mutual release of all claims brought against the city regarding the operation of a recovery residence at 14 Downing Drive, as more specifically set forth in the conciliation agreement attached hereto and made a part hereof. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the City of Texarkana, Arkansas, that the settlement reflected in the attached conciliation agreement is approved, and the city manager is authorized to enter into the said agreement. Pass and approve this 18th day of January, 2025.
City attorney's read the resolution. What's the desire of the board?
Motion to approve.
No second?
I'm gonna go ahead and second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve of the resolution that was just presented on the conciliation agreement. Could you call the roll, please?
Assistant Mayor Harris.
Yes.
Director Hollebush.
Yes.
Director Brewer.
No.
Director Jewell.
No.
Director Smith.
No.
Director Roberts.
No.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, and the resolution does not pass. Moving on to the other items on our agenda tonight, we'll move into our Board of Directors commentary. Any board member have any comments?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say this,
All right.
Mayor. I know I did have a conversation with someone in regards to this, and they basically told me that if I did vote yes, that they were gonna spend, they were gonna have a loss of money towards my opponents in the future race. And what I'm gonna say about that is that you're right to do whatever you wanna do, you know. My last opponent outspent me over $6,000, but I'm still think I'm gonna vote and do what I think I need to vote and how I need to vote. So by threatening me, by that, you kind of see you wasted your time on that by the threat. I ain't gonna call his name out, but
I got one thing.
but I don't see the point in doing that. But and I'm just gonna leave it at that. But and then the other thing that's going on is Mardi Gras parade gonna be downtown March the 1st. I think they're gonna activity gonna start at 10 o'clock, and then the other thing gonna start at 4. The parade gonna start at 4 o'clock. That then I think later on at Cross Ties there was gonna be I guess somebody coming in playing Zydeco music. I think at 7 o'clock on March the 1st.
Director Brewer?
Yes, just want to inform the citizens of Ward 4 that the investigation we put forward in regards to SWEPCO and the equipment and high amount of power outages, that though we did have representatives from SWEPCO to come out and do an observation to, along with forestry, they came out and take a look at Ward 4. So just keep you informed that there are measures being taken, and as they continue to do their due diligence, we'll keep you informed.
Any other board member?
In reference to agenda item 7, it's a tough situation to be in as a board member, to try and choose the best route for the city, the best route for the constituents, and anything and everything in between. I think it was made clear by Annie and Danny seconded it, that we're in the position that we're in because of failed proper practice. I think that it was established that Hurd probably obtained some documentation or went about doing things the way that they did in an incorrect manner. I think as a board, as a city, as a community, we're better than what we've been. And it needs to be corrected moving forward.
Any other board member? Tyler, you have anything to add? All right. This time, our next meeting will be Monday, March the 3rd. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion
To adjourn.
Just have a motion and a second to adjourn. Could you call the roll, please?
Assistant Mayor Harris,
Yes.
Director Hollibush,
Yes.
Director Brewer,
Yes.
Director Jewell,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes, we're adjourned.